Hello, I'm Andrea from Milano University Press, the University Press of the University of Milan. We started in 2008 with just two journals of its journal section named Riviste Unimi. And only in 2020 books section was created, and alongside this innovation, we started to open our journal section also to universities from abroad, not only from other universities in Italy, but also from other countries. This is just the our home page of the journal section on OJS. In fact, our publishing model is a Diamond University Press, Diamond Open Access. Since its inception in 2008, we started on OJS, and the book section in 2020 is since 2020 is hosted on OMP. So publishing model with no costs either for authors or for readers. We prefer the indexing in open databases, so the DOA-J for journals and OpenAlex. And we ensure, or we try to ensure an accurate metadata creation. So DOI, ORCID, RORS, and so on, apart from the standard keywords, abstract, etc. All of these in order to comply with the most up-to-date open access standards. In particular, as I said, the DOA-J requirements for being indexed and the Diamond Open Access standard more recently. Some numbers, we recently in this year reached the 10 million articles views since starting date of our statistics. And since 2008, we had on our platform 70 journals, of which 55 are now active journals, other are maybe closed or have or are only archives, but 55 actually they publish with us. So being a Diamond University Press requires transparency and independence between our support office, our central support office of the university, made by only two people, and the editorial boards of our journals. So the editorial boards, our 55 editorial boards, have complete independence regarding the scientific workflow, of course, from the submission to the publication, and they manage on their own the journal website configuration on OJS. We train them on the OJS platform since the journal inception or their passage on our platform, and we provide a help desk. We provide guidance on verification of best practices adoption, and as I said, since last year we started to widen our requirements, not only the DOA-J ones, but also, as I said, the Diamond Open Access standard made by Diamas. We support in the indexing, and then we support with the OJS platform maintenance, we produce reports, and since this year we started a copy editing service. It's this is not only an aesthetic, service, but also it permit us to have a more direct look on our journals, on their boards, on their work, not on the scientific, but especially on the respect of some metadata. for example. Let's see ORCID. ORCID IDs are, of course, implemented in OJS through a plugin. We strongly recommend them as DOAS requires. And we ask all our journal to implement it through JS and also in the full text. You see on the left all the JS screen of an article and its PDF on the right. ORCID plugin is well integrated in the OJS platform. So it allows the users to directly link their ORCID profile to their article. And when the author fills its information, the submitting author is required to enter the ORCID link. But there is maybe a little issue with this way, because the author needs to fill also its email in this plugin. If he doesn't do it, the ORCID badge it's not shown on the article page, you know. It's a problem if maybe you have articles with maybe 6, 8, 10 authors, but only a corresponding author. So you have maybe only one email address, and you have to ask all the other authors to provide it, or you wouldn't have ORCID. And this it's more an issue for the human and social sciences, maybe um, journals, because metadata and especially authors are more widespread in the STEM area. So we recognize that this system to have a confirmation from the author is a way to prevent journals on OJS to wrongly attribute articles to authors without their involvement. But it also limits the widespread adoption of ORCID. Often when an article has multiple authors, as I said, it's difficult to have all of the email address. With regard to the ORCID plugin, it's not immediately clear that each author must have a unique email address in order to confirm the ORCID ID. But this is a little issue. We, as a university press, activate by default on all our journals this plugin, and the editorial boards are encouraged to complete it. We have seen that the use of ORCID increase in our journals after this general activation and more widespread information about it and about this new open access standard. With these two approach, constant updates on open science, so improving the use of more accurate metadata, and ORCID in particular needs to be in an environment of knowledge that should be spread to our to the editorial boards, not just you have this plugin, you have this metadata, you should use it, but how, why, what is its place in the open access environment. And the ongoing monitoring metadata that we are making with our copy editing service, as I was saying, it's a more direct approach, and it's made, as I said, only by 2 people, but it's a an eye on the work of the journals. And this copy editing service, so how you represent your article in a full text, has led to a different system to represent ORCID. Not every one of these is really clear, especially with many authors. A final note, we are starting to implement ORCID IDs even in the editorial team page to show you see the editors-in-chief, the editorial board, have a link to their official Scholar page and also the ORCID IDs, while in some other journals, they tend to put only their name and their affiliation without a link, as is this advisory board. It's a thing we are encouraging them to implement, but they manage their journal in a Diamond University Press, so we can just communicate to them why they should do it for the public and for the scholarship community. I'm finished, maybe a bit short.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and it's great to hear that you're seeing an increase amongst other disciplines as well. If you have any questions for Andrea about how the Milano University Press is utilizing ORCID, please feel free to submit them to the Q&A now. And I'm happy to hand it over to our next set of presenters, Natasha and Claire from Liverpool University Press. Natasha, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks, Kimberly. I will do that now. 1 second. Okay, is that
perfect?
Perfect. Okay, hi everyone. So I am Natasha Bickle. I'm the Journals Marketing Manager at Liverpool University Press, and I'm joined today by Claire Hooper, who is our Director of Journals Publishing. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit about Liverpool University Press. So we are the UK's third oldest university press. We were founded in 1899. We actually celebrated our 125th anniversary last year. We have rapidly expanded in recent years to become an award-winning academic publisher that produces approximately 160 books and 55 journals a year, with more than a dozen digital collections across the humanities and social sciences. The press is also home to Liverpool subscription services, Liverpool distribution services, and a very new offering, Liverpool Rights services. So all of those new services see us offering partnership to other high quality publishers. The press is also a global ambassador for the University of Liverpool. So today we're going to be sharing with you how ORCID supports our publishing workflows, the benefits that we've seen, and also where we see opportunities moving forward. We are quite new to ORCID. We only joined in April. Yeah, we'll be able to share our experience of being a new university press as well. So I'm just going to hand over to Claire, who will speak on our next slide, which is why ORCID matters to LUP. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Natasha. Hi, so my name is Claire Hooper. As Natasha mentioned, I'm Director of Journals Publishing at Liverpool University Press. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking us to come and talk. So before adopting ORCID, one of the recurring challenges we faced was author disambiguation. So we needed to ensure that the right publication was connected to the right author or person on our website. We'd also had an instance where bad actors had actually cloned one of our journals and created a website pretending to be our journal, which caused confusion for authors and for editors. We couldn't identify genuine submissions, genuine authors, genuine papers, and our authors were unsure of the actual site for the correct journal. So it was a little bit tricky. So ORCID provides a persistent, trusted identifier that solves this problem at scale. For authors, using an ORCID ID reduces administrative burdens. It ensures that their work is properly credited and strengthens their professional record. For us as a press, ORCID improves metadata quality, simplifies processes, and makes our authors' work more discoverable worldwide.
Great. Okay. Are we on to the next slide, Claire?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. I will talk about our most used membership benefits at LUP. We rely on a number of ORCID membership benefits. The authentication for reliable author ID collection. So we collect ORCID IDs using authentication. So instead of authors having to type in a number, they log in through ORCID, and that way we know that the ID is valid and it really belongs to them. So that helps to avoid errors, and it gives us a reliable, persistent link between the author and their publication. And then ORCID API for integration into workflows. So the ORCID API lets our publishing system talk directly to ORCID. So that's our submission and peer review platform, ScholarOne, our hosting platform, Atipon, and also the pipelines that send metadata to Crossref. So that means we can automatically capture, validate, and reuse ORCID IDs at different stages of the workflow. And it also allows us to push back to the author's ORCID records, so it keeps everything connected without any extra manual work. Then reading from and writing to records. So we use ORCID in two ways. First, by reading verified IDs from authors' ORCID records to confirm their identity. And then second, that's by writing back works that we've published. And this is usually done via Crossref. So that happens automatically. And that way the author's ORCID record automatically updates with a trusted, asserted by LUP publication entry. And then we also use the improved metadata feeds to partners. So when ORCID IDs are included in our Crossref deposits, they flow through the entire scholarly ecosystem. So into databases, aggregators, and also discovery tools. So that makes our authors' work more visible, ensures correct attribution, and it strengthens the reputation of both our journals and also the press as a whole. So all of this really works together to strengthen our metadata feeds through Crossref, and it ensures that our journals and authors are represented consistently across the ecosystem. Okay, Claire, if you want to talk about the next slide.
Sure. So on the slide, we have outlined the workflow that we use. As Natasha mentioned, we collect ORCID IDs in two ways. For journals using our submission system, ScholarOne manuscripts, authors can sign in or connect their ORCID ID during the manuscript submission process. For those authors and journals not using ScholarOne manuscripts, we collect the IDs during proof stage. So we then pass this information forward via our Crossref deposits, and the ORCID IDs sit alongside the DOIs in our metadata. It means that when an article is published, it not only has a DOI, but is also reliably tied to the author's ORCID record. Via our member portal reports on ORCID as part of our membership, we can see that 181 authors have integrated via ScholarOne since April 2025, which is when we officially got everything working on the back end. Okay, next slide, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, sorry, just one second. Authors are asked for their ORCID ID on submission to ScholarOne. When author proofs are sent out, their ORCID ID is requested. So you can see our production collate and ask for metadata creation, which is included in the XML. It then shows on our Atipon site as an ORCID ID logo. So you can see the ID flows through our production and metadata pipelines, Crossref records linked to ORCID. Authors see their new publication automatically appear once they've authorized it. And I believe that once they've authorized it to work once, it happens automatically. Well, Kimberly might correct me there. We also use ORCID data internally to validate author identity and avoid duplication. And this has been particularly valuable for multi-author international submissions where names might be similar. We do also have the ability to see where our contributors are based globally. And as a publisher, that's really useful. Helps us to track the international reach of our journals, helps us to tailor targeted campaigns like call for papers. And we can also see the times of year when papers are submitted and when the highest number of contributions might be. So as we mentioned earlier, we are a fairly new publisher to ORCID. We only joined in January and got all our systems working a few months later. So there is still work to be done. I think that will come in the form of author buy-in. At the moment, we don't require our authors to provide ORCID IDs, but we highly recommend they do. And we're busy getting out the message about that. We are also working on streamlining our systems to make it as easy as we can internally, whether it's automated or not. And the other thing is the submission system. So the 181 authors I mentioned, that is a slightly limited number because it's only showing journals where we do have a submission system, and not all of our journals currently use one. So that's reporting is slightly limited for now. So Natasha, if we look at the next slide,
Yeah.
this is an example of one of our authors' pages on ORCID. It shows the institution or affiliation. And the next slide shows the works of the author. So you can see at the top there, planning, education and a field of practice. That is Town Planning Review, which is our journal, and obviously has come through Crossref, which is the source you can see. Okay, Natasha, I'll hand over to you for the next slide.
Lovely. Okay, so one of the kind of things we had in mind, I guess, when we became ORCID members was some of our organizational goals that ORCID could help support us in achieving. So one of those is efficiency. So I guess, like we've kind of explained, publishing workflows are complex. So, you have to collect author details. They need to be verified and then shared across multiple systems like submissions platforms with our production team, with Crossref, repositories, aggregators, and so on. So without persistent identifiers, this would mean repetitive manual checks and also a higher error risk. So it certainly helped us with that. As Claire says, for the journals sort of that we have of submitting through Scholar One, and then also we have the option of doing that for journals that don't use that platform as well. Integrity, so it's trusted metadata. It strengthens our role in the scholarly ecosystem. So it ensures that works are attributed to the right researcher. So that is part of research integrity. Any name ambiguity or differences in how names are formatted, that can definitely complicate that. So the ORCID ID makes attribution unambiguous. So when Liverpool University Press metadata includes ORCID IDs, we're part of a global network of trusted connections. Also visibility, so we want our authors' work to be discoverable worldwide in repositories and search engines, and also library catalogues. So when the ORCID IDs are included in the Crossref deposits, published works can automatically appear in the author's ORCID record. So that amplifies visibility because the record is harvested by institutions and indexing services. It also boosts author satisfaction because that automatically is added to their CV. And then also partnership. So it's nice, University Presses are mission driven. So we want to advance scholarship responsibly. So aligning with an open community governed infrastructure helps us to show our commitment to sustainable publishing. So by being an ORCID member, we are part of an international network of publishers, funders, and universities working towards the transparent research communications. So it's really nice to work alongside other progressive presses and to be supporting best practice. So in short, I guess ORCID strengthens our internal workflows, and it also helps with our outward-facing mission as a university press. So I'll just move on to our next slide. So a bit about our experience of ORCID. So we're a medium-sized press, I guess. So because of that, our experience is naturally quite different from a very large or the largest publishers. So we don't have the same technical resources to build custom systems. So we do rely on our vendor platform, ScholarOne, which integrates with ORCID. So it means that we've moved more incrementally. So we started with a few journals and we're kind of growing from there. But the benefits are still significant. You know, we've got cleaner metadata, reduced admin, and greater author visibility. So we're now considering the possibility of a wider adoption of an online submission system for our journals to further increase uptake of ORCID IDs and also to make it easier to collect them. So that might be something for the future and maybe our next step in integration. But we have seen a steady increase in author adoption of ORCID IDs across our journals. So as I say, it does help to improve metadata accuracy. So I guess looking ahead, we're thinking more about how we could extend ORCID more deeply into our book publishing workflows. At the moment, we do request ORCID IDs for our books, but we're looking to build on this more. So yeah, that will be, again, something for us to look to in the future. I'll just hand over to you, Claire, for the next one.
Sure. So if we were to give any advice for small and medium-sized presses, I guess the key would be to start small. Simply begin collecting ORCID IDs at submission, depositing them alongside DOIs to cross-ref. There are cost-effective ways to adopt ORCID or join ORCID. You may join via a consortium or use shared infrastructure. I think that building author awareness is crucial, explaining the benefits clearly, because authors are busy people, they've got a lot to do, and I think adoption will grow organically. And at LUP, we found that framing ORCID as a way to future-proof an author's work resonates particularly well. So moving on to our final slide, that's sort of a really brief overview of how LUP use ORCID and what it's meant for us as a publisher, and we're happy to answer questions. So please do feel free to ask us anything when the presentations have finished, and we'll do our best to respond usefully.
Well, thank you very much, Natasha and Claire, and it's great to hear what your experience as a new ORCID member has been like over the last several months. And now I'm happy to hand it over to a longer standing member with Rob and Rockefeller University Press.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. As the last panelist, I'm realizing that some of my notes will be repetitive, but I think reinforcement is good to show how important these things are. I will proceed. Let's see. All right, let me start by telling you a little bit about RUP. We're a department of the Rockefeller University, a biomedical research and graduate level only university. Any surplus we generate as a press goes back to the university to directly support research. We're not your typical university press. We have no current book program, and we publish just 5 journals, 5 biomedical journals, 3 of which are hybrid, 2 are gold open access. We pride ourselves on the quality of our metadata and our use of persistent identifiers. And for anyone wondering why we care so much about properly tagged metadata and persistent identifiers, they help create connections across networks, establishing trust across entities, and increasing opportunities for discovery. I think these connections are well visualized in this image I found from a Chris Shillem talk that he did a while back on the left. And on the right, you can see a recent cross-refer participation report for one of our journals, and you can see that RUP is far above average on our tagging of content, doing our best to contribute to these growing network connections. With that in mind, I want to share an overview of our ORCID integration journey, and I'll go to some more detail in subsequent slides. We became an ORCID member in 2014, really just to support the mission. We recognized the need to address name disambiguation at that time, and we're ready to support a nonprofit community-driven solution that gave researchers control over their own records. ORCID fit that need, and we quickly made submission of ORCIDs optional for authors, even though we weren't quite sure how we would use them yet. In 2015, Crossref Auto Update, which was described by Natasha just now, went live. And of course, this is a crucial function that allows a researcher's ORCID record to automatically update with verified data as they publish. And this was a game changer for us and made us start moving much more quickly in our ORCID journey. So by 2016, we began requiring ORCIDs for all corresponding authors, and in 2019 for all published authors. At the same time, we began offering verified ORCID reviewer credit to reviewers. And importantly, in early 24, we extended that offer to co-reviewers. I'll talk about that more in a second. Although requiring ORCIDs for an author isn't really a member benefit, it is important. I think all of us have gone through this, even though this is supposed to be about member benefits specifically. Many publishers I talked to are surprised to learn that we require IDs for all authors. So I thought I'd touch on that here. There are several ways we collect ORCIDs, all of which use an authenticated workflow, meaning the author needs to log into ORCID to push their ORCID back to the system, untouched by humans. It's all done via API. So first on submission, we ask the submitting author to add their ORCID if it's not already in their person record in our submission system. Then throughout the review process, we automatically include requests in any email correspondence to all authors who don't have an ORCID in our system, asking them to add theirs. It's a request at that time, but we do get uptake there. And then finally, we enforce the requirement at the time each author of an accepted manuscript completes their disclosure form. So every author is required to complete a disclosure form before publication can happen, and they can't access the form until we have an ORCID in our system. So it's really an effective hook. And this is just an example of a published article chock full of ORCID IDs. And again, as Natasha was showing, when an article is published, Crossref Auto Connect allows for authors with an ORCID in the metadata to have verified author credit posted to their account, as you can see on top here, with the verified source as Crossref. But we also give reviewers the opportunity to have us push verified peer review activity to their ORCID record, giving them formal visible credit for their contributions. You can see that in the lower panel where RUP is the verified source. Our ORCID membership allows us to write directly to records, and the API connection makes it very easy for reviewers to opt in to getting credit for their contributions. And I think that's really important because reviewers really don't get enough credit, and it's not visible, and that can add to the integrity of their record. That said, uptake still isn't very widespread for reviewer credit, but we think it will increase with the growing use of trust markers and identity verification and integrity checks by tools like the STM Integrity Hub, Clear Skies, and others. To us, the ability to provide verified reviewer credit is currently the most important benefit of our ORCID membership, and we expect this importance and use will grow. Something I want to point out here is the higher uptake on Journal E, the red bar. This journal uses more early career and globally distributed reviewers than the other journals do. And my assumption is that the reason for the higher opt-in to ORCID reviewer credit is that less established researchers are looking to increase their verified trust markers, building credibility and having something to point to when applying for promotions, tenure, or grants. Pushing peer review activities to a researcher's ORCID record gives them formal visible credit for their contribution, provides a more complete picture of their scholarly impact, and displays their engagement within the academic community. I had mentioned that we also push reviewer credit for co-reviewers. So it's common knowledge, I think, that researchers often rely on the more junior people in the lab to assist with peer reviews. In fact, RUP encourages this practice. And to formally recognize the efforts of those assisting with the review, we implemented a process allowing invited reviewers to formally acknowledge their co-reviewers' efforts. So upon returning their review, reviewers are asked if any colleagues assisted with the review. They add the names in this interface you see here. A person record is created in our system if it doesn't exist already, and they're offered the same reviewer credit opportunity as the main reviewers, providing the same benefits that come with having verified reviewer activity in their ORCID record. So in summary, verified peer review credit is one of the most important aspects of ORCID membership to us. Researchers get recognition for their peer review contributions. It displays engagement within the academic community, and it builds trust and credibility. And I'll leave you with this quote that I came across last week in an ORCID post on LinkedIn. I'm not going to read it to you. You can read it. And that's it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rob. Quick shout out if you'd like to follow us on LinkedIn. We're always sharing cute little tidbits like that to help inspire your work. Well, firstly, thank you all for your wonderful presentations today. It's great to hear how each of you individually at your presses are utilizing ORCID and making the most of your ORCID membership. I'll give our audience a few minutes here to collect their thoughts and submit any questions they may have through the Q&A. Andrea, if you're still with us, if you'd like to join us, that'd be hot. Hello, thank you. So I do want to get started with a question that I had listening to all of your presentations. I think that just about each of you mentioned in some form author buy-in. And Rob, I think you talked the most about how your press actually requires ORCID at submission. And I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit about what's the response to that from authors? Are they confused? Do they understand? Have you seen understanding grow over the last few years of your membership?
Yeah, so we did give a few years to gradually introduce ORCID, and it was all voluntary. And then there was a point where we were at a pretty high percentage, I mean under 50%, but we're getting there. And we just decided it was time to start requiring it for corresponding authors. And we didn't get any pushback there. And then we extended it to all authors. We really, every once in a blue moon, we get some pushback from someone who doesn't have an ORCID and doesn't want to create one, and they don't know why they need one. But it's very rare. In general, this has been super smooth. And it also contributes to less duplicate records in our submission system, because in the past, when people don't have ORCIDs and they use two different emails, we end up with two records. Now, if they try to add their ORCID twice, those records get merged. So that's a super benefit of that. But I just want to clarify, we're not requiring on submission, we're requiring at acceptance. We would love to push it up to submission for many reasons.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that clarification. And then, so now I kind of want to move over to Natasha and Claire, because I heard you say it's not currently required, but it's something you're considering. So based on what you've heard from Rob, anything you want to share about your process here?
Well, Rob, I actually wanted to ask, do you think that authors in the sciences are more engaged, more aware at this point? Do you think that humanities and social sciences are lagging a little bit behind, perhaps, in awareness of ORCID IDs and what they're for?
I do wonder that. So we focus, we only publish STM journals. So that is what we know. But yes, in my conversations with other publishers, it does seem that way. It does seem that the biomedical community was pushed earlier than social sciences and humanities. And maybe that's why we don't get a lot of pushback.
So we tried at the beginning to require ORCID IDs, and we did get a little bit of pushback. We got a couple of authors, one more than a couple, sort of saying, I don't know what this is, I don't understand it, why do I have to do it, etc., etc. And we'd actually configured our ScholarOne sites not to allow submissions without an ORCID ID being submitted. So I think we are combating that with not requiring it at submission, but asking for it and explaining about it at acceptance, as Rob mentioned. And I think in the future, we would like to move to being a bit more insistent about it. I think awareness is growing, and it's partly our job to help our authors understand what is in it for them, because it really is for them, as well as being for us. Natasha, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, I know you shared with me that we had a particular member of a journal editorial team who was very not convinced, and then you'd sort of explained the benefits to him, and he was completely on board. So I think it's about messaging and people understanding, and then they think, oh yeah, well that sounds great, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it will just take time, won't it? And as you say, hopefully it will happen organically, and as long as we're kind of clear with communicating the benefits, people will get on board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we do understand that there has been there's a thought that perhaps ORCID isn't for those who are in the humanities and social sciences, but we did earlier this year release new work types to help support those scholars to be better represent their work on their ORCID record. So we'll all work together to help ensure that everybody understands that ORCID is for all scholarly disciplines. So I'd like to move on to talking a little bit about resources. And I think Natasha and Claire, you talked about this a bit in your presentation. Being smaller, medium-sized presses and publishers, you don't necessarily have the same resources as a large publisher or extra large, big monster publishers have. So could you all tell us a little bit about what resources you do have dedicated to your ORCID membership and integrations?
Do you want to go, Claire, or do you want me to?
I mean, I think our vendors and our partners have been super helpful in working towards this. I think utilize your vendors. Obviously, Scholar One manuscripts, we worked to integrate our API that way, and Crossref. Having the auto update, that's been really helpful. We've been able to utilize other people's experience, other people's knowledge of how all this all works. We do have, well, we have kind of me, Natasha, and another colleague working towards further implementation of ORCID. But I'd also say speak to and work with ORCID as well, because it's really useful to have regular meetings and understand that after implementation, after launch, there's work to be done. So I think that's what we're concentrating on at the moment. As we say, we're really new to this, so not new to knowing about ORCID IDs, but new to kind of implementing them and integrating them. So we joined in January this year and launched our Scholar One integration in April. So it's early days for us, but I would say rely on other people's knowledge and ask for help when and where you need it.
Absolutely. Andrea, could you share a little bit about the resources that you have within your press dedicated to ORCID?
Well, we are two people making all. So ORCID specifically is managed by our journal editorial boards. We are just supporting them. But as I explained before, during the copy editing service, if we see that articles aren't showing ORCIDs, maybe new articles published, not the past, we see if we could find the author in the ORCID database and we ask the journal to add it, ask their email, because as I said, we need their email in order to connect to the ORCID profile. And so, yeah, two people, but with all our journal editorial boards strength.
Great, thank you. And Rob, could you share a little bit about the resources you have?
Yeah, so we don't have any resources directly dedicated to ORCID, but our overall publishing philosophy is to work with any persistent identifiers that we can. So it's just, we look at how we can use ROAR, ORCID, funder IDs, anything that's out there, and slowly expand as things come up. We think about how we might use those identifiers to better our workflows. So the example that I just gave was starting to give reviewers credit. So, without ORCID, we wouldn't have been able to do that. But I'd agree with the sentiment that, rely on your vendors, especially submission systems. They have experience with this. And to get started, you really don't have to even be a member, just to get started. And that's very valuable.
Great. Well, thank you all for sharing about resources. And to tag on about both of your notes on vendors, my next question is, how do you feel that vendors and aggregators can better support publishers and their authors in making the most of ORCID?
I'll jump in. As I said, I think it's really important, getting much more important to gather ORCIDs upfront upon submission or very early in the workflow rather than at acceptance. And I think for submission system vendors to support the requirement at that stage, and more importantly, it sounds like Liverpool's already doing this, but pull data from ORCID into its system as authors are filling out their submission forms. We don't have that in place right now. Our vendor does not pull from ORCID except for the ORCID itself. And I think that's really valuable. But once we get those IDs up front, integrity checks, ID verification, that's going to all be very important. So the vendors that are collecting the data and the vendors that are running these integrity systems are going to become super important, and ORCID will be the link there.
I think vendors can also make sure that they're including and preserving ORCID IDs in their own systems, and sort of when they're passing on metadata and user information, they are including those, so that it's happening all the way through the program, through the publishing stream.
Great, thank you. My next question is for Natasha and Claire from one of our audience members. With the launch of Liverpool distribution services and Liverpool subscription services, how do you see ORCID helping in both the acquisition and promotion of authors from partner institutions in international markets? Is there scope in this area to help with your expansion?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I would need to speak to my colleague, probably in distributed in our distribution services about that. But that's a really good point. Absolutely, because obviously the work is on our webpage. So I don't know, Claire. Do you know sort of how that would fit?
Well, I guess if you're hosting a partner's content, yeah, or helping to make it available, having an ORCID membership would be super helpful there. We aren't at the moment hosting submission systems for other presses, as far as I'm aware. But the fact that we're a member I think would be attractive, because it's another persistent identifier for authors to use. But yeah, I'm not exactly certain of the answer to that question. But I think I never think it could be a bad thing to be able to offer a trusted source for authors.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. My next question is for Andrea. Just curious, could you tell us a little bit, as a user of OJS, were you and your press able to get up and running easily, or did you need a lot of support from PKP to get started?
Well, I started working here when ORCID was already established, and I suppose that there weren't many issues with the plugin. No, okay. Another person here says that, okay, initially there were some issues, but we speak about 2 years ago, maybe. In the trial of JS, but nowadays no, we don't have problem at all with the plugin, and yeah, we are it works very okay, and you know, we are on JS 3.3, and I don't know if in the 3.5 maybe there are other upgrades and other benefits. And you know, we also use Crossref, but with our OJS suite, unfortunately, data from OJS aren't shared accurately with Crossref. So, for example, Rob showed one of its journals data on Crossref, or its metadata, but our are 0%, for example, or something, because OJS in this version has some problems to speak with the Crossref. it's not on ORCID side.
Great, thank you for that insight. So I think my next question, switching gears a little bit, instead of more specifically focused on ORCID, but just community focused on the scholarly ecosystem. I think in each of your presentations, you all mentioned, you know, our original mission and reason for existing, which is named disambiguation, which is super important. But you also all touched on integrity within the research community. So I'm curious if you could all share a little bit about how is your organization weathering this storm that's occurring with research integrity and bad actors that is going on, and how do you feel that the scholarly ecosystem could all work together to support a more trustworthy ecosystem?
I mean, we did have the instance where bad actors did hijack one of our journal sites. They were actually reaching out to authors and asking for money for submissions to the journal. They copied our Scopus information, they copied our Web of Science information. So it really was something quite difficult to deal with. How are we coping? Well, we had to spend a lot of time speaking to Google, asking them to take down the fake site, which eventually, well, or take down links to the fake site, which they did eventually. But the problem was that we were having a lot of submissions via the ScholarOne site to this journal of sort of really random, completely nonsense papers. Things like, you know, cat herding or whatever. And it was just complete AI nonsense, slop. So that was really difficult. So I think one of the things we can do is make sure everyone is who they say they are by assigning a persistent identifier, not just to authors, but to journals, to publishers, to institutions, and that will always help. We're also a little bit reliant on our partners for sort of screening tools in terms of AI screening, paper mill screening. The people that hijacked our site were actually selling citations, not aiming to make money, but sell citations to certain journals. We traced it all. If you are interested, you can have a look on our blog. But all of those things I think will help, and just making sure that everyone is aware of, you know, what to look for when you're thinking about submitting to a journal. Think, check, submit is a great tool, and that really helps. And I guess linking in things like an ORCID ID, like a ROR, a DOI, can only strengthen that infrastructure. You know, we need to stick together, don't we, at this stage?
Mhm.
So we're doing a number of things. We have seen an uptick in submissions that we are suspicious that they're coming from paper mills. You know, we've been running Authenticate forever, really. So that's the first check against plagiarism. We've recently started using the STM Integrity Hub. We send every single submission through the Integrity Hub, and that's a real great example of the community coming together. So one of the biggest values there is the duplicate submission check, which for participating publishers, it will check the new submission to make sure it's not active in any other publisher system. We've seen more of that than I expected. And then there are also paper mill checks and AI checks in the way of tortured phrases and things like that. And the work that STM is doing now on identity verification, I think that's going to become very important. Other than that, we're running some tools internally, just such as size score, to just, you know, give the authors a sense of what they are missing in their manuscripts, as far as, you know, data availability statements, things like that.
Yeah, we also use Authenticate, or we suggest it to our journals. We create their account and we explain how to use it. So we don't have, as a Diamond University, Open Access University Press, a look on our own on the single article, but it's the journal, the journal duty. We just the other year we recommended the introduction of on every one of our journals of new policies on retractum errata, how they should transparently assess how they react to every correction that an article has gotten through its publication history after post-publication, of course, and it should be very strict and I say another time transparent. We use Authenticate and the persistent identifier. The issue I mentioned about ORCID plugin, it's of course as I said a future for in order to not make author to not associate ORCID IDs to authors that aren't a real author of the article. So I suppose that I think that research integrity should be not only through, created through tools. We could give tools to our journals, to our authors, but we should create an environment on how research should be conducted and how you should make research starting from PhDs. We, as a unit in our university, not only the university press, make training to all the academic bodies on where to publish, how to store data. We as a university press encourage our journals to use our repository or other repository and using fair rules for research data and so on. It's not just a tool or some tools they could help, but you have to put all these tools and policies and customs in your way to do science.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you all for sharing how you're managing research integrity within your organizations. It's great to hear and share these tips amongst everyone. I have shared quite a few links in the chat, some mentioned by our presenters, others. Rob mentioned STM. We actually did a session with STM earlier this year. If you want to check it out and learn more about the work that they're doing to help support research integrity. And I've also included some links to some ORCID resources available for anyone to use specifically for publishers and editors. I do want to take this time now to thank all of our presenters for spending this time with us today and sharing about how their presses are making use of ORCID. And I want to thank all of our audience for attending today. So thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you at a future event.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.